Fáilte ras go dtí an seomra beag mícheolas an dom agus tá mé isteach sa seomra seo le mo cara Ben. Ben, chunas atá tú?
An bhaith mícheál agus ú féin.
Not... I nearly said not bad. Cén chuir a bheag a ceann, Ben?
Tá sé piece of your pínver níl sé róá.
An raibh lá párig maithagad.
Yeah, bhí sé simú. Bhí sé fear simú. Bhí mé an bhá ag túsan an lá ach an sin cuain lá rá agus tháinig an ihe agus an sin, you know. So now that we've alienated like 90% of our listenership by speaking in a language that nobody else understands.
We're probably banned from YouTube.
They think it's Arabic or something. We're having a plot. We're making a plot. Paddy's Day was good, Michael. My head is awfully sore. It's a strange thing because I'm such a loud man. I'm actually the worst possible person to wake up to with a hangover. Like I hurt my own head when I speak too loudly.
Oh, your own voice resonating inside your brain.
It hurts so much.
Now you know what podcasting with you feels like. I have my headset set to minimum volume.
The gain is low as possible. Yeah, so it was good. How about yourself? Did you get up to...
Ben, look, many a year I have worked to St. Patrick's Day. And St. Patrick's Day has become associated with work for me. So this year I completely ignored St. Patrick's Day.
Attaboy.
It was bloody brilliant. I stayed at home. I had crumpets. I stuck on a Union Jack t-shirt and I pretended I'd never even heard of Ireland.
Oh, excellent. That's amazing.
It was great.
Congratulations. You know, we have a strange relationship with our nationalism, as you know, Michael. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of Patrick's Day myself. I think it's a bit shit.
Oh God, Ben. Our Irish listeners, Ben, stop alienating people.
Sorry, lads. Sorry.
Benjamin.
Yes.
Speaking of alienation, Infinity War has aliens in it.
Seamless.
That's not
segue,
great, is it,
Michael?
No, that wasn't a great segue. Did you see the trailer though? Anyway, moving on swiftly.
I did. That was so smooth, Michael. I really feel that, you know, as we've come along here, you've just really grown into yourself. You used to be a wallflower.
I've nailed down the art of a podcast segue.
Yeah, but now you're a podcasting demagogue. Like, it's amazing. The power you wield with words alone. Stuff to behold. I did see the trailer.
Look at me sitting here with my mug that says tea on it, but there's no tea in it. It's just water.
Just first world rebellion right there. First world rebellion. There's the ghost of several British Victorian gentlemen going, and then also saying,
on the floor.
And then saying, "Oh, we're in a colony. That's strange." We aren't a colony, by the way, but British Victorian men didn't know that. Yeah, I saw the trailer. It was very interesting.
It was
just now. Yeah, you're taking away podcast magic again. We actually prepare for hours for this podcast. It's not ad hoc at all.
We just watched it just now, Ben, just before.
No, we didn't. No, I watched it the moment it dropped. I wait so that the people that listen to this podcast for informed, you know, analysis of pop culture from two Irishmen, you know, they can trust what we're saying. We can trust what we're saying. I'm usually hungover, to be fair. It's not like I haven't been hungover on the podcast before. No, I quite like the trailer. I like the key thing I like about it, not that many spoilers.
Yes, once again, it doesn't give us much in the way of the plot structure.
Yeah, I like that though. That's good. That's a good thing. Because generally speaking, we spoil an awful lot of movies these days. And I don't like that. But it seems to be very similar shots that we've seen before, just from different angles.
Yeah, so, there's not a lot new in it, is there? Let's be honest.
No, but like you get a little bit more Thanos, a little bit more of that Brolin-esque face coming through. They've shaved a few inches off his chin, you know. It's you know.
Have you been paying attention to the internet, Ben?
What's that, Michael?
Look, don't play the fool with me. Marvel have been accused of being marketing geniuses. They've made the entire internet deeply care about where Hawkeye is. Just by not mentioning him in any of the promotional material. He's not even on the poster.
He's not. And then I did see that they released a publicity statement being like he's very important to the plot. I don't think he is.
No, of course he isn't. I think it might be a thing of he arrows an Infinity Stone out of Thanos' hand in the climactic battle after having not seen him for the entire film.
Yeah, he was just on his ranch with his family being like, nah, fuck it. Like,
yeah, I don't care.
To be fair, that man's a god. I'm not sure I'm much use here. And then his wife will have a heartfelt moment in a flannel shirt with him. And she'll convince him to join the fray. And then Bob's your uncle. Oh, Soul Stone for the win. Interception. Maybe.
Ben?
Yes.
Oh, hold on. I think there was something wrong with my mic there. Ben, I was recording on the wrong mic.
Again?
No, now I have fixed it. I was recording on the wrong mic like you last week.
Oh yeah, okay, that's nice. Save your own ass by
we're all
having a go at mine.
We are even Steven now.
Even Stevens, two
what
failures.
What we're saying? Something about Infinity War? Doesn't matter. Look, it doesn't matter, Ben.
Poor old Hawkeye.
He'll be fine.
He's been replaced by Stephen Strange. That's about it. Yeah. Fair enough. It looks very, it's a nice. I'm looking forward to seeing Tony Stark interact with Gamora, try and sleep with her. He can't really though, because they've made him into a faithful Pepper Pottsy kind of guy, didn't he?
Yeah, and when Pepper Potts gets killed, we need him to really feel it.
Yeah. Does she not still have superpowers from Iron Man 3? Is she?
I don't think so.
She not still rocking the extremis?
She would have blown up, wouldn't she? I think he fixed her.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, they burn out after a while. That's what it is. They burn out after
Anyway, Ben, let's move on. Did you see sci-fi sensation, Netflix science fiction, you know what I'm saying?
Annihilation. Michael.
Yes.
I did see it. I saw it. I've seen a movie.
Welcome to our popular segment, Ben's seen a film.
Oh my god! It's so exciting when everyone's talking about it, and I understand. It's amazing. I saw the film. I enjoyed it. It's fucking tough slog though. It's not an easy movie.
Really?
Not in that regard. As in, it's quite unnerving as a film. Like
it's a science fiction horror.
Yeah.
For sure.
Oh no, it's a little bit of cosmic horror. I get why you're a huge fan of it now. It has all the Michael, former biologist turned comic book nerd tropes
recovered biologist
that you like to recover biologist. But yeah, like a genuinely unnerving film that was brilliantly acted, put together, and shot in like a really creative way. I thought that all the CGI would get fucking annoying, but it doesn't. It's and some great little editing tricks and script tricks. Yeah,
as well.
like I keep coming back to the crocodile scene,
right?
Where they open the jaw and film the entire scene from inside the crocodile.
Yeah,
I really liked that. Like
I thoroughly enjoyed how they lost a couple of days at the beginning when they first enter the woods, and what particularly struck me about that scene was that's such a normal thing to see in that type of film. You see them entering the spooky situation, and then the next time you catch up them, they're at the campsite. So you just think, oh, that's just a normal editing trick. We just haven't seen them set up their camp. Yeah. But then they don't remember doing it either. So that's actually
there's
the edit.
Really nice...
What we thought is the edit is actually how they're seeing it as well, which is really...
We experience it with them. Like it's really something. It's like I was quite like it didn't affect me. That's a very strong way of saying it, but it stuck with me. Like it's fairly strong.
That bear as well. He's a real asshole.
That bear is fucking creepy as shit, man. Yeah, but yeah. So before we go any further, we should say massive spoilers for Annihilation from now on. Well, I mean
Annihilation.
Because we have to do spoilers because it's just really interesting. But like, there's some really, I think, it's Alex Garland first of all, the same guy that did Ex Machina. So you're gonna see some. It's got that British refinement to it, So it's very subtle in some of the ways that it does things. I think it's a fascinating concept. I don't know how much of it is like biology accurate. Like I don't.
Oh, none of it, Ben.
Okay, excellent.
Well, I mean, they do throw in real biology words.
That's good.
But the idea of that was actually one of the things I didn't like about it was I'm perfectly fine with that shimmer being a kind of refraction of light and time. I'll take all of that. But when they said it refracts light, it refracts time, it refracts DNA. Like, shut up. That doesn't mean anything. Like, that's just bullshit. That doesn't. How can you refract a molecule? I've lost the ability to speak English. It's so annoying. I think it would the reason they were mutating, I think, would have been best left unexplained rather than refracting DNA being thrown in. But I mean, aside from that, the way things were mutating was all coherent, not necessarily logical, but coherent.
But you could. There's some kind of grounding to it.
Yeah,
as you go along. Yeah,
I like the thing about why the plants were taking on the human shape. That was good.
Yeah,
and I liked the fact that, well, like when she said, could it be a crossbreed between a shark and a crocodile? And the biologist went, don't be so stupid, basically.
Yeah, it was just like, you can't crossbreed different species. Yeah.
Yeah, but then was more than happy to accept refracting DNA later on. Although maybe she wasn't. Well, maybe she wasn't happy to accept it.
Cute British Tessa Thompson character said it, and she's a genius.
Ben, did you find that Tessa Thompson and Natalie Portman might have been better suited in opposite roles?
Oh, that's a good... Yeah, that could have worked really well.
One of my main issues with it is I don't buy Natalie Portman as a badass.
I don't buy Natalie Portman in general. I don't... I find that she's often quite stiff. She's quite stiff in this, but it suits the character in this. So she's getting away with it by... but she's quite a stiff actress. Whereas I think Tessa Thompson has a mountain of range. Like, if you even take Tessa Thompson's... So the last thing I saw Tessa Thompson in was Thor Ragnarok.
Yes, I remember.
And putting those two characters in comparison, they're completely different people. Like, it's really
vastly different. It's almost like she's acting as different people in
almost.
a sense.
And yes, that's a very quick remark there, Michael. Thank you for cutting the legs out from under me. Appreciate it. But if you do that with Natalie Portman characters, it's just Natalie Portman being Natalie Portman as a biologist, Natalie Portman as a ballerina.
She's the Ben Affleck of female actors.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Natalie Portman. Yeah, I think that's perfectly fine. Yeah.
Bad in it.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing. I never even considered it from that point of view. I found like there are some jarring aspects of it that are just pointless. I think the psychologist character is very poorly suited to the role that she's in, because I think she's just a bit silly.
The actress, you mean, or the character?
The character, the weird, disengaged kind of, cares, doesn't care. I found out that it's part of a trilogy of books.
Yes, that's 3 books.
Yeah, called the Southern Cross trilogy.
Yes.
And it's very much like hard sci-fi. So
refracting DNA.
Not that hard, huh?
Look, it's pretty hard. It's pretty hard sci-fi. I mean, it's not Star Wars. There's no space wizards or anything like that. It's reasonably hard sci-fi. Wizards. That's what I think they are, Ben.
I quite like that. No, I think, funnily enough, after watching it, I thought it was actually better that it went straight to Netflix.
Go on.
And the reason I say that is that does not have mass audience appeal.
Ben, people said that about Arrival by Denis Villeneuve.
They're so similar as
they
films. They're so similar as films.
Yes. I mean, you could buy them in a cheap DVD 2-box set pack.
That'd be pretty good though. Like that's a decent,
it would be a good box set.
Like that's a decent filmmaking. How to make a film well box set like that.
Yeah, they would both work. Like Arrival and the book it's based on. It's not that closely based on the book that it's based on.
I suppose you'd have to move away from it eventually, wouldn't you? You could, like, the books are always hard. Sci-fi is hard to adapt. No, are you?
Well, yeah. I can't think of a good adaptation of hard sci-fi. I mean, Arrival is it's a very good film. It's not my favorite adaptation, though. I still think the novella is better.
I haven't seen I haven't read the novella.
You haven't read it's called The Story of You? Is that what it's called?
Oh, okay.
No.
Interesting.
Welcome to Your Life? Something like that. I can't remember the name.
Yeah.
But it's very good.
Okay, I'll check that out. No, I think, you know, I really like some of the subtle things they did in that film. I think Alec Garland is really good at what he does. Like, I don't know if you noticed at the end of the film when she's being interviewed, you see the tattoo from the other woman is now on her.
Yes,
arm. Yeah,
very good. Yeah,
it's a real nice. But I also think it was, you know, I love a trope, as we've established on the show. But I think the whole.
You also love a genre hybrid, Ben.
I do. Oh God, give me a good. Decent.
That's what your Tinder profile says.
That's what it says. It's just a picture of Logan and other films.
Boiled science fiction robot.
Yeah, it's real nice. And then I don't get many matches on it though, to be fair. But yeah, no. I really like the self-destruction arc that goes through it, and how it slowly just kind of like the film is nothing earth-shattering in terms of story.
Story of your life.
Thank you.
By Ted Chiang.
But what it boils down to in Annihilation
good man.
Is that you know, it's just her dealing with the guilt of cheating on her fella.
Yeah.
Cheating on her fella, and the whole story reflects that. But like, everybody has a little bit of damage. Like, it's a very nihilistic, not necessarily nihilistic, but it's quite bleak in how it looks at humanity. But yeah, I think, interestingly enough, I think in the last 2 years we've seen two really, like, Annihilation and Arrival are two really different types of sci-fi. And what I also like about them is they're female-driven without going on about them being female-driven.
Well, we got one line in Annihilation. All women, all scientists.
Oh, yeah, well, you have to have your little, you know.
You have to have a little one.
Your little, woo, look at that glass ceiling shatter. Woo.
Wait until we get to the bloody bees.
The bees.
Yeah, because we've had Annihilation and Arrival. Wait until we get to.
Oh yeah,
Brouhaha and Berserkers. Brouhaha is an upcoming science fiction film from Michaelandbenjaminspodcast.
Please don't hold it to the standard of Arrival or Annihilation.
No,
that will not go well for either of us.
It's good though, isn't it, Ben?
Yeah.
The story behind it is weird. We could do a whole podcast someday on the story of it when more of it comes out. But the story of why it ended up on Netflix is just bizarre.
Yeah.
About studio interference and being too intellectual and all this shite. It'll make an interesting flashback episode someday.
He seems to have defended his vision quite well.
Yeah. It's a good film.
For obviously, like, he's being punished by being sent to Netflix. But genuinely, don't think that would work anywhere but Netflix.
Oh yeah, you were actually going on about that in my intro.
I don't see audiences, like, that is not a mass appeal science fiction thing. First of all,
yeah, but as we said, neither was Arrival, and yet
true,
big hit.
True, but I don't think I've been so uncomfortable in certain scenes in a long time. Like that bear yoke.
No, it was horrible, wasn't it?
Was disgusting, and then
he's awful.
You know, but like, even like the really subtle deaths are kind of twisted. Like where she, like, it's body horror in a really uncomfortable way sometimes.
Oh, when they cut the guy's abdomen open.
Yeah, and it's crawling. Like, that was really uncomfortable for me to watch. And then I think Oscar Isaac's whole death scene is really uncomfortable as well. Where he's talking to someone holding the camera, and you start to realize, you know,
it's him.
Yeah, it's oh man, like, some of the imagery was just like really, like, even Tessa Thompson's character, even her death is quite unnerving. In its
just kind of saunters off.
But like the way they show it growing out of her skin and stuff, like, it's quite uncomfortable to watch. And then what your man became, Mr., you know, twisting intestines, He kind of spreads out into that
the big
fungus
thingy on the wall.
thing.
Yeah, it was very.
Yeah,
Look, it's a good film, Ben.
it's a good film.
I think it's going to go down as a classic.
It's a good. I might have to watch more films on time. Like a good film.
People should watch it. Benjamin,
Yeah.
speaking of being punished by being forced to watch Netflix, did you make your way through Jessica Jones?
I think we both know the answer, Michael. I've done all I'm going to do for a week. No,
Excellent.
I didn't.
Look, Ben, I finished it. I'm going to spoil it a little bit for you.
Yeah, go on.
Classic Marvel Netflix mid-season twist.
Oh fuck!
Do you want to hear?
Villain, not the villain.
Yeah, the villain is the villain, but also not the villain. It's her mother.
Oh, for fuck's sake!
I know. No, it was all right actually.
Who in the Marvel Studios world, or not Marvel Studios, who in the Netflix Marvel merger has such an issue with parents? Who has such strong trust issues with parents? There's loads.
I think most Hollywood people.
Yeah, what the fuck?
I think that's how you end up in Hollywood, Ben.
But who keeps greenlighting it, being like, "Oh, Tom's chatting about his parents again. Like he's putting it into his work again. Can we not just fucking have a different?" Like, because Trish's mum is a right old wagon.
She is.
Sure, poor old Danny has a couple of serious issues there.
Yeah.
The villain in Iron Fist, one of the two children of the rich
Meacham
dickheads.
siblings.
There we go. Thank you. That dad's a real bad egg.
Yeah.
You've got your Luke Cage Baptist ministers. You know, like there's a lot of dead parents and fucking dickhead parents.
I think you're talking about super heroics more so than look at bloody Tony Stark.
Yeah, that's bloody
He's
fair.
got the parents. Spider Person.
Batman.
Bat Person. It's person now, Ben. Everything's person.
Bat Person.
They've won.
Okay,
the social justice warriors have won.
SJ Dubs. Social, okay, fair enough. But I haven't seen. Anyway, go on, get some spoilers going. Let's.
No, that was really it. That was all I wanted to talk about. The kind of fun twist of the spoiler was that if I had watched Jessica Jones this time at my normal pace, I would have found that out on Mother's Day.
Ah,
yeah, but I was a bit slower this time.
Missed marketing opportunity. That's fair enough.
I know, but look, it's all right. It's you really miss Tennant. He's in one episode. And the episode that he's in is probably the best episode of it.
Well, just put Tennant in anything really, and you've got yourself a decent episode of something.
Tennant the lager. You could stick it in a shandy.
That's how I brighten up my Monday mornings. Yeah, put a Tennant in me, and away we go. So yeah, I'm totally up for that.
Benjamin,
yes.
Let's move on, shall we?
If you say so.
Okay, I do, actually. I'm looking at the time. Ben.
Yes.
It was St. Patrick's Day this weekend.
It was the National Day of
Oh, bit of horty-dorty.
Oh, bit of horty-dorty.
Top of the morning.
National Pre-Regret Day. Yeah, go on.
And in honour of St. Patrick's Day, I decided to have a look back at a Marvel Comics and see what sort of Irish characters they had then.
You looked at Marvel Comics?
Yes, I was looking at Marvel Comics. Have you ever heard of them?
The kids read them a lot these days, but I don't.
The kids these days. Benjamin, you've heard of Banshee, obviously.
I have.
And Siren.
Good old Sean Cassidy and his daughter Teresa.
And
Teresa and Sean.
Tom.
Ah, Tom, the old awkward cousin that no one wants to sit next to at the communion. Yeah, go on.
Exactly.
Go on.
Now, Ben, have you heard of this Irish character? Her name is Molly Fitzgerald.
Is this Shamrock?
Yes!
Who allowed that to happen? Who went?
Oh, it's one of the best things that's ever happened. This character, oh Jesus Christ!
So Michael,
yes,
what even is Molly Fitzgerald?
Molly Fitzgerald was basically, Ben, a character that Marvel invented when they needed 50 new characters and they needed them quick, and they needed them to be from exotic places like Europe or the Middle East. So every character was basically a country's flag or national emblem painted on the front. Oh, I really can't talk today.
Yeah.
It was a country's flag or national emblem printed on the front of some sort of spandex. So we got Shamrock, who was a red-haired colleen.
Oh, fuck.
Called Molly Fitzgerald, in a green spandex outfit.
Yeah.
A green on green, even. 2 greens.
Oh.
With a shamrock painted on her chest. Ben, do you know what Shamrock's power is?
Is she really lucky?
Yes, she has the look of the Irish. Even better, Ben. Her father was an IRA sympathizer.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
And he brought her to the mountains of Mourne to pray to the old gods to get superpowers.
Lads.
But instead, she got possessed because her father was in the IRA. She got possessed by the victims, she got possessed by the souls of thousands of innocent victims of war. And those souls are always with her. And every time something bad is about to happen to her, one of them can sacrifice themselves to change something.
Jesus
giving
Christ.
her the appearance of the look of the Irish.
The look of the Irish is sacrificing thousands of victims. What the fuck?
Oh, it's bloody. Look, it's mad. It's the classic. It's the gamut of classic Irish stereotypes in one character. Red-haired, Colleen, IRA, blood of the innocent.
They can never get past the Ra. They're all mad about the Ra.
Well, I mean, look, the Ra has good publicists. And
fuck.
In America, everyone knew the Ra.
Oh, fuck.
Everyone over there knows the Ra, Ben.
Say what you want about the Ra, but they're awful good at advertising.
Yeah. So, Ben, the interesting thing about Shamrock is that you can't actually spell her name without almost all of the letters in the word sham. No, all of them. Yeah, all of the letters.
All of the letters in the word sham. What's a sham? What even is a sham, Michael? Because that's quite a niche piece of vocabulary there.
Is it?
No, I don't think it'll carry to that in America.
Well, look, a sham is a bad thing.
To us, it's a
mockery. Ben.
It's a mockery.
It's a disgrace.
Mockery. Something pretend to be. So my jaw is broken as well today. It's something pretending to be something it isn't.
Ben, we sound like two people who have never done a podcast.
We do, don't we?
Two bumbling idiots.
We are two bumbling idiots that do a podcast.
So, Benjamin,
yes.
In honour of St. Patrick's Day and Shams and Shamrock,
love an old sham.
We've decided to take a look at Ben, we're going to have to remind people of last year.
Yeah,
we started our famous series.
A long time ago.
It was about 10 months.
A long podcasting time ago when you've only had about 8 months of podcasting under your belt. We ran out of stuff to do really quickly. And we literally looked around the room and went, what can we do? And it's like, well, I'm Irish, you're Irish.
Let's talk about Irish.
Let's talk about Irish. And then Michael was like, Irish in what? And then we were like, Irish in stuff that we like. And really, that rambling conversation has set the precedent for so much of what we do here.
Yes, it
every
has,
Sunday.
Really.
We just ramble and usually talk about things that are Irish. But anyway, we're going to do round 3 of Irishmen Suspaus.
Irishmen Suspaus!
Where we took a look at Irish representation in comics and pop culture.
Hooray!
That's what we do. That's what we do here at the podcast. And that was our first one there. Shamrock.
Yeah.
Say
Shamrock without most of the letters of sham.
Shamrock. But yeah, it's real good. Yeah, I don't know. I think we've covered this before. I had to do a little bit more. I was trying to do a little bit more research, taking a look at who we've got. My God, the amount of people that go on about, how Steve Rogers is actually Irish and how, blah, 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 blah. I bloody hate that.
Is Steve Rogers Irish, Ben?
His mother is his parents are Irish immigrants.
Both of them?
Yeah, both of them are.
Oh, good lad.
They're the Rogers from.
Sure, look, he has more acclaim to play international soccer for us than Tony Cascarino.
Is Tony Cascarino? He played for us, didn't he?
He played for us, but has no Irish heritage whatsoever.
Pure sneaky. Sure, we had a manager that couldn't speak English for what, five years?
Yeah, he was Italian.
He didn't even bother to learn. He was earning like $1 million a year and didn't even bother to learn English with that $1 million.
Yeah.
That was good of him.
Well, that's none of your business what he does, Ben. You leave him alone. Let him live his best life. Don't you start slinging that crap around. That's poor show. Yeah, but I mean, there's lots of examples of that. I think this time around, I'm going to let you focus on all the characters, and I'm going to take a look at how we actually show Ireland and Irish people in pop culture. Because quite frankly, I found it quite difficult to find things that were Okay, look, I've got loads of characters, Ben. Let's start with probably the most prominent one.
Yeah, go on.
Ben, do you know what is 2000 AD?
2000 AD, I do. I do know what 2000 AD is.
Tell me what you know about it.
It is a British comic book company.
No, Ben, the year 2000 AD.
Oh, not much has changed, but we live under water. Oh, no, that's the wrong thing. Sorry, never mind. That's 3000 AD. Never mind. It's a big old dystopian future.
No, I meant the comic.
Yeah. It's a big old British publishing company that did independent stories outside the regular canon of superheroics. It's actually how a lot of the great comic book artists these days, like Grant Morrison, your Garth Ennis's, it's how they became interested. Because we didn't really, over this side of the pond, not that America.
That America?
We didn't actually get all them American fellas in the spandex and the bright colours and whatnot. So
no, we did. I mean, Europe does have a strong history of comics, but not superhero.
But not superhero comics. We didn't have any of that. Like, and then you know, like, because we're so impoverished, we made our comics in black and white. So if you read 2000 AD, it's usually black and white stories and that kind of thing. But like a lot of big characters have come from 2000 AD.
I believe that 2000 AD was traditionally printed by carving the characters into potatoes. And then dipping them into soot.
That they mixed with a little bit of river water, if they could spare it.
Some of the characters, Ben.
So Judge Dredd is probably the most famous one.
He's pretty famous, yeah. He's in several films.
Halo Jones, another kind of famous one of that ilk. The whole Judge Dredd canon, Judge Death, that kind of thing.
Yes, Ben,
is Death's Head from... Death's Head?
Death's Head is Marvel UK.
Oh, okay.
The one you've forgotten, Ben, is Slaine.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow.
Have you forgotten Slaine?
Mr. Muscles?
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you ever read Slaine?
No. I remember being distinctly put off by it.
Well, Ben, that's an interesting point, because when I was a kid, I actually, before I got into American superheroic comics in my early teens, I had read more British comics. I wouldn't have called myself a huge comic fan or anything, but I certainly had like a few copies of different 2000 AD things lying around the house.
Yeah.
Some Sonic the Comics, the British one, not the American one.
Fair enough.
Things like that knocking about the house. In particular, Ben, when I got my appendix out when I was 10 years old, people gave me comics.
That was good.
Anyway, and Slaine was one of the stories in those comics, and I never liked Slaine either. And I think I didn't like it because of the grossness of it.
Yeah, it's very shock and horror. Not shock and horror necessarily, but it's gross out comic book writing with ultra violence and things like that. Would you like to tell the people what it is, Michael? It's about
Ben, let me tell you. So, Slaine was created in the early 80s by a gentleman called Pat Mills.
How are you, Pat?
You might be familiar with Pat Mills because he was very popular in the 2000 AD kind of sphere.
Verse.
He created a lot of the characters. ABC Warriors, have you ever heard of them, Ben?
No.
I don't know if he did Rogue. No, that's pretty much all you know. Anyway, he created Slaine with his wife, and Slaine.
He did it with his wife.
Yeah.
That's a strange thing to do.
Well, his wife was the artist for the first issue.
I know, but Jesus, like it's...
She is a noted... Her name is Angela Kincaid, I think, her divorced name, or her maiden name, maybe. She was a popular children's book illustrator at the time.
Well, that didn't fucking shine
through, and he convinced her to do this.
Fucking hell.
Slaine, basically, Ben, is imagine an Irish Conan the Barbarian.
Yeah, it falls in that kind of Frank Frazetta style tradition, doesn't it?
In the early issues, if you go back to the 80s, there's all of these have been collected, by the way, which you can still read them now. There wasn't that much of a Frank Frazetta feeling to it. It was much more of a European comics feel to it.
Okay.
There's an artist called Mike McMahon.
Okay.
Or Michael McMahon, or Micheál McMahon. He had this very sketchy, lined, kind of rushed line artwork to it that looks nothing like Frank Frazetta. But, it's still the same kind of thing. It's barbarians in waistcloths, fighting busty women, making love with busty women. then a horrible thing tries to eat them. What's interesting about Slaine, though, for us, is it's very, very, very Irish.
It's
not actually, the early stories aren't actually set in Ireland. They're set in Tir na Nog.
Oh, Tir na Nog, the classic mythological scape, alternate dimension where nobody grows old.
Exactly, but in this Tir na Nog, nobody grows old. It's called Tir na Nog because nobody grows old, because everybody dies young.
That's pretty good, actually.
Which I actually kind of like.
That's kind of funny.
Tir na Nog is basically, in these stories, it's Ireland, Britain, and Northern Europe. Back when it was all one landmass.
Okay.
So before the North Sea level went up. And Slaine, basically, Ben, is Irish mythological figure Cuchulainn.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's who he's supposed to be.
It's not that he's supposed... I mean, Slaine is as much... And we've talked about... Ben, this is one of your favourite things, is the crossover between mythology and comic books.
That sounds like a genre hybrid to me.
I know, Ben. Slaine is as close to Cuchulainn as probably comic book Loki is to mythology Loki.
Bit flexible then.
It's very flexible. I mean, Slaine isn't even... Well, in modern days, he became the first High King of Ireland. But in the original stories in the 80s, he wasn't even explicitly Irish. He was a Celtic warrior.
There we go.
Not necessarily Irish.
Classic.
But he's the member of a tribe, Ben.
Yeah, we love
a tribe of good earth worshippers.
Oh, that's good.
Good in terms of like alignment as opposed to not evil. But I mean, he'll kill you. He'll kill you as soon as he look at you.
But for good.
For the good of the land, or because he thinks you're a bad egg, or because you insulted him, or...
Oh, right.
But I mean, he doesn't have world-ending evil plans.
That's good.
But he's a murderous hell bastard. And the thing that he has been, you might have to correct my pronunciation on this, because as we demonstrated earlier, you do speak Irish better than I do. He has the rear strad.
Oh, I don't know what you're trying to say. Can you spell it for me? Give us now a spelling.
Bloody hell. Riarsrad, I think.
Shroud, rear-shroud.
Rear-shroud, something like that.
Rear-shroud. What is it?
Hold on. I'll just have the comic here. R-I Fodda A-S.
Yeah, Reesh.
T-R-A-D.
Reestrad. Yeah, Reestrad.
Anyway, it's a battle frenzy, which Cuchulainn had, and lots of kind of ancient Irish. Basically, he can Hulk out.
He can Hulk.
And when he hulks out, he becomes this massive, freaky-looking monster thing, and his eyeballs pop out on stalks, and black stuff spouts out of the top of his head, and he can do a lot. It's quite super heroic
in its
way, but it does come directly from Irish myth.
Yeah, the battle frenzy is a thing in our thing. That's very interesting, Michael. I never really got into it. It's very hard for me to stomach. I'm a sensitive soul.
I would say, Benjamin, this to both you and to the listeners, that it's actually worth a look.
Okay. All right.
Especially if there are some American listeners listening, though, Ben.
Over there in that America.
In America, it'll be hard for them to get used to how episodic European comics are.
They are very episodic.
Because these are weekly comics. They're not monthly comics like the Americans have. And a weekly comic is usually maybe 4 or 5 pages.
Yeah, no, they wouldn't be that big.
So, probably his most famous story is called Sky Chariots.
It's a terrible name.
No, it's pretty good. Ben, shut up, Ben. It's actually good.
It's a terrible
I really
name.
like it. It's really good. He's escorting an evil druid to the north to give the secrets to the good druids or some shit like that. And they're on a flying boat. A flying boat very like the flying boats from Thor, actually. And then they're attacked by sky pirates. And the sky pirates are Norsemen. They're Vikings, essentially. And it's all about the battle. But it's about 9 or 10 issues.
Okay.
But that's only still maybe 50-odd pages.
Yeah.
So it's about 3 issues of an American comic.
comics. Yeah, okay. Sky
But
Charts.
look, Ben, Slaine is pretty good. Well, I mean, it's still running, Ben.
It's still going. Yeah.
It's still going from 1983 to now. So there's good and bad, obviously. And Pat Mills is still writing it.
Oh wow. Okay, so he stuck it out. He's dedicated to that project. That's interesting. No, it's interesting that you brought up a little bit of mythology, because one of the ones that I have down is to do with that. Image Comics, Michael.
I've heard of them.
Yes, they're doing quite well. They are kind of like your independent alternative to Marvel and DC. If you're not going to do the big
Come on now, they're not that independent.
No, to be fair. But if you don't want to do massive superheroics and you want something with a bit more out there kind of flair, you go to your Image. You pick up your sagas or your Walking Dead zombie stuff, and you give it an old read. But they have a bit of a hard-on for Irish mythology quite a bit of the time. And they've three kind of lines that deal heavily with Irish culture. One of the big ones is The Wicked and the Divine by Kieran Gillen. And I can't remember the name of the other guy, but The Wicked and Divine is...
Ben, I read that.
Yeah.
And then I stopped reading it. Why did I stop reading that?
It's very soap opera-y.
Is that what it is?
It's not always, but it also doesn't hold your attention for very long. It seems to struggle with pacing. It's good. It's interesting. Basically, in the world of The Wicked and Divine, gods are cyclical. And what that means is each generation, the gods pass on their form to a new generation of people. And those people are chosen from the young people in the thing, and they inherit the powers of a certain god or mythological figure. So, for example, you have this era's version of Lucifer. You have this era's version of Bastet, the Egyptian goddess, and stuff like that.
Is Lucifer a sexy lady?
Lucifer is a sexy lady, very David Bowie-esque.
A sexy, a Tilda Swinton
A
sexy lady.
A Swinton sexy lady, yeah. And they do all that, and then basically they become icons in each era. And for whatever reason, this time they're usually musicians. They usually become musicians. I feel like Kieran Gillen might be a little bit out of touch with how mass-wide affecting musicians can be, but it's fine. So, you have your own...
So you're saying that if you were to write this series, they would be YouTubers?
Yeah, I think that would make more sense.
They would be Logan Paul in a forest.
Unfortunately, yes. I think that would probably be the way you do it now. But look, that's far be it for me. It was his creative decision. None of my business. Anyway, usually they're singers. I think they all are. And it's kind of interesting. Your kind of really popular gods are like the pop musicians. Your death gods are kind of like the punk and metal singers and stuff like that. So they kind of, match here and there. But one of the main characters in it, one of the most powerful gods in it, is the Morrigan.
Oh.
And the Morrigan is, I suppose, since we were speaking about Cuchulainn, she is the Irish version of death, I suppose, the death goddess in Irish mythology. And she's kind of interesting because there's 3 forms to her.
As there often are, Ben.
Yeah, and depending on which iteration you read, it's either 3 sisters or sometimes it's 3 incarnations of the same woman, and there's lots of different things. But anyway, she's strongly associated with crows and carrion birds. And she's in this, and it's very, very interesting because she's not Irish in this. They don't match their nationalities all the time, and Kieran Gillen came under a lot of fire from the SJ Dubs because he was appropriating culture and giving the wrong ethnicity, the wrong mythology. Because you can't have a black man who's an Irish god, and you can't have an English woman be the Irish goddess of death, because that's not their culture, and blah 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 blah. You also can't reincarnate gods into human bodies every couple of centuries and turn them into pop stars, but nobody seemed to give out about that.
Prove that, Ben. Explain Bieber.
For those of you who didn't know, Michael is actually the most steadfast Justin Bieber fan you have ever met. I've seen him start fights in pubs.
Baby, oh.
I always remember that one poor man who said he didn't like Baby as a song. He felt that, his later work was better.
Song.
Yeah, bloody great song.
And now he suffers in hell.
Yeah, because Michael put him there.
But only as a sacrifice to my Lord Bieber.
So for most of Ireland, the Morrigan is the goddess of death. For Michael, it's Bieber. But, whatever way you want to cut it. So it's really interesting. But she pops up again and again because Americans love anything that says goddess of death or god of death, because it's real cool. So it's real edgy. And it pops up again in another one called The Hunt. That's another one that Image put out in 2016. And it was a retelling of Irish mythology. Because
I like a retelling of mythology, Ben.
Yeah. Because we've talked about this before, how Norse mythology gets retold all the time, and how Irish mythology hasn't really been adapted in the same way, which is kind of interesting. But anyway,
although Slaine.
Yeah, Slaine, but to the same, I don't know, appeal. I don't know if you can say that. Because
so basically what you're saying is you don't like Slaine.
Fundamentally, yes. Yeah, I suppose I am. But anyway, I just think that's interesting because they often take that god because it's the god of death and it's very cool. But her representation is they play fast and loose with what she actually does. The actual goddess of death in our mythology rarely gets involved in human affairs. She kind of just watches over the battlefield and waits to pick people off.
The kind of interesting thing, Ben, about Irish mythology and pre-Christian Irish mythology is compared to a lot of mythologies, there's a lot of guessing.
Yeah, because we don't. It's more of an oral tradition.
The old lads back then, they didn't do a lot of writing.
Nah, it's unfortunate.
So, I mean, our knowledge of pre-Christian Celtic myth is nowhere near as robust as Roman, Greek, Egyptian, Norse even. Although the
Norse is
a lot of it
tricky as well.
A lot of it may well have been made up by the Icelanders in the last couple of hundred years.
The Snorri-Snorri-Snudsons and the like.
But anyway, let's not get too philosophical.
And the other one that I wanted to take a look at from Image is in.
No, hold on. Actually, sorry, I had something to say.
Sorry.
I can add a couple of Morrigans there for you, Ben.
Yeah, go on.
Did you ever watch the TV show Lost Girl?
I didn't.
In Lost Girl was about a succubus who discovered that she was part of the world of the Fae.
Oh, God.
And, it was the typical bloody American. It was an American-Canadian co-production. It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't great either. It's where your friend and mine, what the hell is her name again? The one we used to cast and everything. Not Christina Milian. The other one. The one who looks like our friend.
Oh wait, hang on. Oh,
what's her name?
The Russian young one.
The Russian one, Ksenia Solo.
There we go.
It's what she kind of came to fame in. But anyway, there's a lot of Irish mythology in that. And the Morrigan is when we first meet it, we think it's a woman. Well, it is a woman. And we think that's her name. But it turns out the Morrigan is the kind of inherited title of the leader of the evil Fae.
Oh, nice.
Or the Dark Fae. There's also a Morrigan in Capcom video games. Have you ever heard of a Capcom, Ben?
Yeah, she's the weird, super Japanese sexualized thing. And she has an Irish accent, if I'm not mistaken.
She's supposed to be Scottish.
Oh.
But she's voice acted by an Irish actress, so she sounds Irish.
Because if you can't get a Scot, an Irish will do. Progress, 2018.
Yeah, well,
guys.
I mean, it was all one and the same. Morrigan Ainsland. She's a succubus as well, but she's the queen of the succubi.
Oh, okay. What does she get up to? Any interesting? Any?
Darkstalkers, the video game series, is bizarre. It's weird. She split her psyche in two.
Ah, yeah.
And that created a sister.
Ah, yeah.
Who's your really typical kind of Japanese sexy preteen
waifu
character.
Kind of thing. Ah, yeah.
Look, stay away from it.
But
I don't know who does the voice of Morrigan. I wouldn't be surprised if the woman who voices Morrigan these days is the voice of Tony Stark's Friday armor.
Sure, listen, boss. Sure, listen.
Yeah, the power core is breaking down, boss.
It's destabilizing, boss.
I don't want to. No, it's not a Kathleen Barr.
Kathleen.
Canadian. Oh, she's Canadian, but she does it with an Irish accent. She does an all right Irish accent. I thought she was Irish.
Fool us once, well done you. Fool us twice, we're just not doing the research as usual.
So that's enough about Morrigans, Ben.
But I think, by the way, I just want to come back to something you said there. If listeners only ever take one thing away from this podcast, it is creepy
Take Ben away.
Japanese preteen culture, stay away from it. Like,
stay away from sexy preteens.
If you have to take something from the podcast, take that. Yeah, so that was that. And then the other thing that I kind of wanted to look at today is we talk a lot about characters that kind of represent that, but I'm always fascinated with how they actually show our lovely little island nation in comics. We're always very backwards, I find, in a lot of the...
Well, Ben, surely you've seen the episode of The Simpsons where they come to Ireland.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
For a lot of people that I know, the last ever episode of The Simpsons that they watched.
Because it's just so bloody insulting.
Well, I mean... That's what The Simpsons does. I don't think they gave us a realistic portrayal of either Australia or Brazil, but...
That's true. That's true. No, I just think it's kind of interesting. We usually get... We all live in thatched cottages, Michael. And what listeners don't know is that you actually live in a little bow... You live down a little Bohreen. I actually have to walk about... When I'm in Dublin, I have to walk about 6 miles up the road. And I carry my laptop in a wooden pail that I made myself. But that's only on the days that my ma won't let me use the donkey to walk the laptop up.
And you keep an onion tied around your ankle to frighten off succubi.
Yeah, it's to fend off the little people. You can't be having that, like. They're always nagging us to be on the podcast, the little tossers. We won't be having it. But that is kind of, a large part of the perception of Irishness in comic books. And I like, there's one particular example that always kind of stuck with me. Do you remember the Titan book or the Panini collector's edition books for comics where they, of course, include storylines?
We talked about them before, haven't we?
So that was how I kind of got into comics. That's how I got into Batman comics, because they did a Batman monthly thing. So once a month they would give this out, and it would have one current storyline for the week. It would have one classic storyline for the week, and it would have one kind of more less popular story for the week. So you'd have one from the main Batman line, you'd have one from the 70s, and you'd have one from the Bruce Wayne fugitive, or the Adventures of Dick Grayson kind of thing. So like, it was a real interesting way to get a good rounded one. But
still is, Ben.
Yeah,
and those are still good comics. I mean, they've expanded those range massively now, and I actually think were I getting a young European into comics, that's the route I would go rather than taking them to a comic book shop.
Absolutely. I think it's nice, first of all, because it's extremely accessible. You can get them everywhere, and you don't have to wade in and deal with people that try to upsell you things.
Leave it out, Ben.
Leave
comic book shops alone.
I won't do it. No, I won't do it. Dicks. So anyway, there goes the sponsorship. Anyway. There's always a famous one, and we've talked about this creative team before. Neil Adams, Denny O'Neil, did a famous run on...
sound a little bit Irish.
Yeah, probably because they have quite a strong Irish background. Neil Adams actually never shuts up about his Irish background. He's very patriotic for a country he's only been to once. No. Like, he says that.
Oh, Ben, I think you left your handbag here.
Yeah, anyway, I'll put my lipstick away. But there's one where Batman is really run down. He's been fighting crime in Gotham non-stop, right? And in the most 70s fashion ever, Jim Gordon stops him and says, "Look, I bought you a ticket to Ireland. You need a vacation."
Oh, to Laura Lara.
And so James Gordon, the police commissioner of Gotham City, sends Batman on a police-paid-for vacation to Ireland. And
I wish I lived in the 70s.
And naturally, Batman goes as Bruce Wayne. But this is the really interesting part. So he goes to Dublin, and he gets off on what looks like any dock from a period piece set in the 1700s or 1800s.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. And then he doesn't stay very long in Dublin. He goes down the countryside because he saves a little boy on the ferry over. There's a little fella, and he's playing with a potato. I'm not even making this up.
A wee lad playing. He's printing some 2000 AD comics.
And he falls into the water, and Batman doesn't know lep in, right? And it turns out that this
a salmon. Yeah. Like the salmon of knowledge.
And it turns out this young fella,
the wee lad, is actually Bairn. Oh no, that's Scotland.
Is actually guarded by the ghost of Hugh O'Neill. So this starts this.
Oh, you nearly made me swear.
starts a whole saga, and it turns out the little fella invites him back to his village because, you know, mister, you saved me and that was great and my family will want to meet you. And then anyway, we go back.
This is Misha Batman.
We go back.
Call me a Stocks of Dublin.
And we go back, and it turns out that his Uncle Sean is there, and Uncle Sean is very grateful to Mr. Wayne for having saved his little fella. And so, anyway, it turns out there's an evil guy poisoning water in this village, and there's a whole
Paddy O'Shady.
It's ridiculous. But the most important thing that I found really difficult about that story is that it just didn't match for me. I read this when I was about 13. I'd say I was about 13.
Right.
And I remember
what
reading.
What year were you 13 in, Ben?
I'm 26 now in
2015.
Maths.
Take away
7 and
13.
7 and 6 is 13. 13 years ago, 2003. Yeah, we got it. So yeah, 2003. And I remember reading this and going, "What the fuck? How is this set in Ireland?" Like, it didn't make any sense to me as a person, and it was really backwards. And that brings me to other comics as well and how it's represented. I think we're quite poorly represented in terms of how developed we are as a nation. Because, like, we always come up against the L stereotypes.
Ben, you've obviously never been to Galway.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so there are some towns.
Oh, no, hold on. Sorry, I quite like Galway. Let me do that again.
Okay. Ben,
you've obviously never been to Cork.
Ooh, zing.
Yeah, take that, Cork.
You've obviously never been to Navan or Monaghan. Any of those, really. And I think it comes up again and again. I remember it, but even as we've moved on as a nation, you know, 90s and stuff like that, like 90s Dublin is nothing like what Ireland has been romanticized as. Like, you look at photos of Dublin in the 90s, it's bloody rough. Like, it's not a... It's a rough old town.
Hey.
Back in the 90s, back in the day.
Hey, watch it, you.
Watch it, you, pal. Mr. Carton off to Italy. And I remember reading a Punisher comic a couple of years later, and the villain in the Punisher comic is a bizarre villain for this particular mini run. He's Jamaican.
Jamaican me crazy.
But he's a Jamaican immigrant to Dublin.
Jamaican me crazy.
He grew up in Dublin in the 90s.
That's unlikely, Ben.
And exactly. And his...
Unlikely, Ben, but not impossible.
Not impossible, but he speaks with an Irish accent. He's a big international crime guy. And
what's his name?
The main, I can't remember. I'll have to find it. I'll put it in the link down below. But the main thing behind his psychosis is the fact that he grew up black in Dublin, and it was so traumatic that he became a psychotic killer. Oh. And I remember reading this going, what? Like
Phil Lynott.
Yeah. And like, there's a whole scene where there's an inspector from Scotland Yard who's been tracking him for years, you know, and he comes across the Punisher, and he's having a chat with another bunch of lads in the old crime catching business, also known as the police.
Yeah, the police is the word we use for that. I'm in the crime catching business. Not even criminal catching or crime stopping, just catching crimes with his mouth open like they're whizzing over his head.
But I remember they're having this conversation, and everyone like goes silent when he explains the backstory. And the backstory is like, you know, he grew up in Dublin, and then everyone goes, "Oh Christ, growing up black in Dublin must have been hell." And I was reading this going, what the fuck do people think is going on in Dublin? Like, there's racism in Dublin, but there's racism in every city. I don't think it gives you PTSD and turns you into a psychotic killer.
I wouldn't imagine so.
Like, I mean,
we could check. We could ask some people.
Sure. I just found that really interesting when I used to watch it. Anyway, anybody else there? Michael on the list?
Ben, we could keep going, but we're about to touch an hour.
I think we are. I think we're going to have to wrap it up.
We'll have to come back to Irishmen's Sposs 4.
Yeah. Anyway, let us know down below if you think any 80s comics that struck a chord with you that have Irish representation in them. Are you part of another country and you feel that your country is fairly underrepresented or poorly represented or very well represented in comics or in movies? Let us know down below if you fancy. As always,
do that.
Happy hangover day from us here in the tiny room. And
Also, Ben, hold on. We need to do a little shout-out thing. If you're listening to us on iTunes, which I know some of you are, because I know some names. I'm not going to say any names, but I might text these people after. But if you're listening on iTunes, give us an review.
They're good for us.
Review on iTunes does a lot for listenership, apparently.
Yeah, so we'll start getting reviews. And yeah, if you are part of a Dublin comic book shop, don't bother giving us an sponsorship deal.
Oh, no deal. Oh,
I'm only kidding. I just did that to piss Michael off. Give us an sponsorship, lads. We'll give you a mention. Okay, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Oh.